Okay guys, so here we are, we did addition, and now we're moving on to subtraction. I'm going to show you some strategies of how we subtract 3-digit numbers. And this whole video is going to focus on using the expanded algorithm, the expanded form version of our numbers to subtract. So let's get started. Here we have 678, and we're going to subtract from 678 the number 345. And so the first step is to expand both my numbers. 678 is going to expand into, remember, expanded form is that the sum of all the place values. So I'm going to expand each place value. So it's going to be 600 plus 70 plus 8 minus 300 plus 40 plus 5. Once I expand the numbers, I can just go ahead and go in there and start subtracting. So I start with my ones. I have 8 minus 5, that's going to give me 3. I have 70 minus 40, which is going to give me 30. And then I have 600 minus 300, which is going to give me 300. Now, I have to condense my answer and bring it back into standard form by adding them all together. So I have 300 plus 30 plus 3, which is going to give me 333. Let me show you that again on this next page. Here I have 345, and I'm subtracting 213. So I expand each number again. So my top number becomes 300 plus 40 plus 5. And my bottom number would become 200 plus 10 plus 3. And again, I can go ahead and start subtracting. So 5 minus 3 will give me 2. And then 40 minus 10 is going to give me 30. And then 300 minus 200 is going to give me 100. Now, when we're subtracting with the expanded algorithm, it might look confusing because we have these plus signs in here, right? But those plus signs are there because we're using the expanded form. And remember, the expanded form is the sum of all the place values. So I did my subtraction, and then I have to go back and add the sum of all the place values again that I ended up with. So 100 plus 30 plus 2 is going to equal 132. So therefore, 345 minus 213 is 132. Now what happens though if the number on the bottom is bigger than the number on top that we're trying to subtract from? When that happens, it's called regrouping. Because remember, we cannot subtract a bigger number from a smaller number. And I'll show you what I mean. Here's the number 732 minus 371. I go ahead and I expand both my numbers again to help me make my subtraction easier. Okay? And then I go ahead and I subtract. So the first one I'm going to subtract is my ones. And I have 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 equals 1. And then I go to my tens place. I have 30 or 3 tens minus 70 or 7 tens. Well, 30, I don't have enough there to take 70 away. So I have to regroup because I can't. Let me show you this picture what I mean. 30 is 3 tens. So here are my tens. These rods represent 10. And when I say 30, it means I have 3 of them. 70, I'm trying to take 70 from 30. Well, you can see that I do not have enough to take away from that. You can visually see that. If there are only 3 tens there, then I can't take 7 tens from it. So what I have to do is regroup. By going next door to my hundreds place, and borrowing or regrouping for 100. So if I regroup 100 from my 7s, in my hundreds place I now have 600 because I'm basically taking 100 from there. And I'm regrouping for 100 or 10 tens. Because remember, 100 equals 10 tens. So if I turn these tens, that 100 into tens, it will help me subtract in my tens place. So there's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and finally 10. So now I have 13 tens or 130. And you can count those tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Now I have enough tens to take my 70 away from it. And 70 is 7 tens. So let's go ahead and take 7 tens away. I go ahead and I can delete those, take them away, and I'm left with 6 tens. And I can go ahead and put that into my answer. So 130 minus 70 is going to give me 6 tens, or the number 60. Then I go ahead back into my addition sentence and I say 600 minus 300 is 300. Again, I take this expanded form and I shrink it back into standard form, and I have 300 plus 60 plus 1 is going to give me 361. Let me show you what that looks like one more time. Here I have 646 minus 459. So I expand the numbers by their place values, and I go ahead and I start at my ones place. I have 6 minus 9. Well, 6 is smaller than 9, so I don't have enough to subtract 9 from. So what I have to do is I have to go next door and borrow or regroup from my 40. So I cross out my 40. I'm borrowing 10 ones. I'm borrowing a 10, so it turns into 30. And I'm adding those 10 ones into my 6, which would turn the 6 into 16. Now I have 16 ones and I can subtract. 16 ones minus 9 gives me 7. Now I can go over to my tens place and start subtracting, but once again I run into the problem where my tens place is smaller from on top than it is on the bottom, and I can't take 50 away from 30. I don't have enough tens to do that. So again I have to go next door and regroup. I cross out my 600 and I'm regrouping 100 from my 600, so it turns into a 500. And I'm turning, now I have 130 because I borrowed 100 from my hundreds place. Now I can actually subtract, and 130 minus 50, or 13 tens minus 5 tens, is going to give me 80, or 8 tens. And then finally I can go ahead and subtract my hundreds place. 500 minus 400 equals 100. And then I take my expanded form and I then convert it back into standard form. 100 plus 80 is going to give me 187. So again, regrouping is when the number up top, the number I'm subtracting from, is smaller than the number on the bottom. The saying is, if there's more on top, don't stop. Meaning if the number on top is bigger, then I just subtract like normal. But if there's more on the floor, meaning if the number on the bottom is bigger, then I need to borrow from next door. So if there's more on top, don't stop. But if there's more on the floor, I gotta borrow from next door. Okay, that's what you have to remember. Now, what happens if we run into some zeros in our number? Okay, expanding across zeros. Again, I expand my number. 806 becomes 800 plus, there are no tens, so in my tens place I have 0, In my ones place I have a 6. And I'm subtracting 319, so it's 300 plus 10 plus 9. Alright, and so I go ahead and again I start with my ones place. 6 ones minus 9 ones. 6 ones is not big enough, so I have to borrow from next door. The number on the bottom is more, so I borrow from next door. But next door I have a 0, and 0 can't give me anything. So what I do is I skip 0 and I go straight to my hundreds place, and I go ahead and I cross out my hundreds place and I borrow 100 from my hundreds place. So 800 turns into 100. Then I go and put that into my 0, and that's going to turn my 0 into 100. Or now I have 10 tens, or the number 100. But again, I still have to get enough ones in my ones place to subtract 9 from. So I regroup again, turn my 100, I borrow 110, so it becomes 90, or 9 tens. And I put that other 10 back into my ones place and turn my 6 into 16 by adding 10 to it. Then I go 16 minus 9 is 7. 90 minus 10 is going to give me 80. And then finally my hundreds place, 700 minus 300 is going to give me 400. So my final answer, once I bring it back into standard form, is going to be 487. So when I regroup across 0, I just skip past my 0 and go to the hundreds place or whatever place value I need to get to, and I start regrouping there. I bring it back into my 0, and then I can cross out, once my 0 has something to borrow from, I can then borrow from, like I did in this example. I borrowed 100 from 800, turned into 700. When I regrouped that, my 0 turned into 100. Then I was able to take 10 ones from my 100, and that became 90. And I was able to put those 10 ones into my ones place and turn my 6 into 16, and then I was able to do all my subtraction. When you're regrouping, it's very important to remember to, for one thing, to regroup, but also when you are borrowing, like when I'm borrowing 100 from 800, it's very important I do not forget to turn that 800 into a 700. When I'm borrowing a 10 from my 100 here, it's very important I don't forget to cross out that 100 and turn it into a 90, because I'm using that 10 in my ones. Alright guys, we'll practice this. I know it's a lot, but we'll practice in class and we'll go over this.